I want to bring in Mike Pompeo now, get his view of the situation, sir, on a couple major international issues, and thank you for your time. To China in a moment here, but what would you do now, given the stubbornness of the ability of the Ukrainian military to move forward in a big way on Russia?
Well, Bill, good morning, Shannon. Good morning to you as well. The mission hasn't changed. The American interest in Ukraine hasn't changed. We should be leaning into this. We should be providing them every tool that they have asked for so that they can do the work they need to do to defeat Vladimir Putin. That should be the American mission. It should be the European effort, too. They need to do more. What we saw in Lviv overnight, in the video that you showed, suggests that we've not done nearly enough. We've been too slow. We've been too concerned. You know, the Biden administration is about to head to Vilnius, to the NATO summit, where they'll gather. They should be focused on helping the Ukrainians get the things that they need. They shouldn't be patting themselves on the back because they've managed to hang together. Vladimir Putin still has enormous resources, enormous power, big manpower, Bill, a big manpower advantage for sure. But the Ukrainians have tactical and operational advantages as well, and we should help them exploit them in ways that matter to every family all across the United States.
Let's talk about China, too. Secretary Yellen over there. Some Twitter posts coming in from the secretary saying this trip presents an opportunity to communicate and avoid miscommunication or misunderstanding. We know Secretary Blinken was over there just a couple of weeks ago, and one of the things they wanted to reform was military-to-military communication. China said no thanks. I mean, are these trips better for China or for us? Who's getting the better end of the deal on these trips?
Shannon, my guess is they're probably not very important to either side, but if there's an advantage, it's probably to the Chinese Communist Party. I'm convinced that they see these American leaders going there as kowtowing to them. It's worth noting those Chinese leaders aren't coming to meet us on our home turf. We're having to go play away games every trip. And we go on these trips and come away with nothing, even as you suggested. Even the most basic rudimentary communications plans that were in place with the Soviet Union for decades, just hit button in case of emergency, those don't appear to exist, and the Chinese continue to rebuff our efforts to gain them, to regain that basic understanding. I think the Biden team just misses this fundamental point. It's not about communications. There's no miscommunication here. The Chinese Communist Party is at economic war with the United States. To say, well, gosh, if we just talked a little bit more, Xi Jinping will change his way, I think is just foolish. I think it misunderstands what the Chinese Communist Party is engaged in. And in the end, that presents enormous risks to every family all across America and the American economy. They'll continue to steal our stuff, our intellectual property. They'll continue to conduct espionage operations like the balloon all across America. These are things that I think the administration should take much more seriously, and sending emissaries to bow down to the Chinese Communist Party in the way that it appears that we are to gain almost nothing seems like a big foreign policy mistake.
The Trump administration, led by you and others, were pretty tough on Beijing. I don't know how this administration carries it out over the next 2 years, but her message is don't decouple. Would that be yours?
No, our message would fundamentally not be let's focus on climate change and don't decouple. I think that's actually their twin messages that they deliver. By the way, the Chinese aren't likely to do either of those. They're not going to change their coal-fired power plants from production, and they are almost certain to only decouple when it's to their advantage. Our message was very different. Our message was we're going to protect the American people every day and always, and whether that is an economic response to demand reciprocity, that they treat our businesses in a way that is fair, whether it's simply don't hold Americans, don't detain Americans when they travel to China. Simple things that protect Americans, and standing up to a Chinese Communist Party that's been after us for decades. 50 years of engagement failed, Bill. We turned that on its head. I think the American people understand that was a failed policy, and we need to change how we respond to Chinese aggression.
And we still have Russian aggression. We think it will on so many different fronts, but we're thinking about our Wall Street Journal, corporate family colleague, Evan Gershkovich, who now is going to mark 100 days in captivity in Russia. We have seen this play out, Russia talking about a potential prisoner swap. They love to have an American to hold on to use in these negotiations and that leverage. You guys had a lot of, big headlines in getting people home. How does this play out? How does this work with Putin under this administration?
Well, I'm praying for Evan and for his family. I pray that he'll return home safe and healthy just as quick as possibly can be. But Shannon, your point's well taken. We got Brittany Griner home only to find that they took another hostage because we traded Brittany for a terrorist, the merchant of death. That's a huge mistake. The way we got American hostages home was to use America's diplomatic, economic, and military might and strength, not showing weakness, not trying to trade, because when you trade, you only incentivize further hostage taking. And so I want to get Evan back. I hope they'll have discussions about how you might do this, what might be fair and reasonable. But when you take an innocent American journalist like Evan and hold him and then demand that you get a bad guy that's held somewhere across the world for having either killed someone or conducted terrible crimes, and you trade those two, we're only likely to see this increase. And I'd add this too, Shannon. These two ideas aren't different. We were talking about Russia and Ukraine. We were talking about China. Make no mistake about it, Xi Jinping is looking forward to a continuation of this conflict in Ukraine, and he is counting on Vladimir Putin to win an American weakness. And whether it's how we get Evan back or how we prosecute or assist the Ukrainians in prosecuting this war, we need to demonstrate American strength and resolve them. And we can do that. We're totally capable of each of those.
You tied it all together at the very end there. And Russia's always looking for a swap. Sir, thank you for your time. We'll speak again very soon.
Bill, Shannon, thank you. Have a great day.
You bet. You as well. Mike Pompeo, thanks.